Throwback time. It's one of those classic review times when we just go back to my youth and pick an album from my early days. Well, this is an album that actually had a huge impact on me when I was younger, but even bigger impact when I was getting older. Reason? Well, too many to list them all. Just kidding. Of course, we go to the point. So let's welcome Suicidal Tendencies, The Art of Rebellion. A nice reminder, which I didn't actually remember when I picked this from my shelf. Nice prize. Well, what can I say? I was a young student, and to pick albums with nice price, that was before we had euro here in Finland. That was always a nice way to save some 40% out of the price. So this takes me back to the 1993 when I was student. Here is the CD inlay, by the way, and the backside. As you can notice, this artsy-fartsy thing, track list upside down. So 1993 or so, when I was doing commercial kind of stuff, and well, Suicidal Tendencies was one of the bands that I really liked. Now that I remember, this might not be the original copy I actually acquired back then, because I think it wasn't nice price back then, and I actually sold this album at some point. What a weird tale. So as you can see, this is the kind of old school way when the prints were not always, booklets, but kind of these weird foldable things, lyrics and all, pictures and all, but foldable. I'm kind of happy these kind of things don't happen anymore. I'm just happy that they're booklets, just how it should be, easier. So Suicidal Tendencies started early 1980s, kind of started doing their hardcore, punk influenced skateboarding obviously, but also gang thing. That's why they had these bandanas when they were doing their stuff around, Los Angeles area, more on the beach area, where the surfers, skaters, bodybuilders, sunbathing people, all kind of crazy people went out and did their stuff. But Suicidal Tendencies was a band that was bound to change, and they changed quite a bit during the years. Obviously, when I got to first hear this, I heard, the kind of 80s material, How Will I Laugh Tomorrow, and that kind of stuff. And once I got, my money to spend on CDs, I started with the early ones and, the first album, and then moved on. But to be honest, even though they are kind of pioneers in their own skate-oriented or skate-influenced rather type of crossover, hardcore, trash, whatever metal, I never got to like those early albums that much. Of course, that was kind of a demo-ish material when I would compare to the later ones. But albums such as Lights, Camera, Revolution, and especially this The Art of Rebellion were the ones that actually kind of opened my eyes more than most other metal albums like ever. So why this today in classic reviews? And I know most people won't even gonna bother watching this because it's not black metal stuff, it's not even death metal stuff, it's some crossover trash kind of stuff. But anyway, those two people who are gonna watch this, I'm gonna explain. Like I said, I liked what they were doing with their hardcore stuff, and when they were changing towards trash, having lineup changes and all that stuff. That was interesting. I never was myself a skater. Obviously in Finland it's different thing than around Los Angeles area. But nevertheless, obviously we got that skating culture as well. That kind of probably had something to do influencing, getting know this band around 80s, late 80s. But when it was like early 1990s, and I got to see this band warming up for Metallica 1993, I really started to like this band. And maybe a few months later, I think when I was living in my own rental apartment, this was among my first CDs to get. And I was convinced so much about how these guys played, how they had lyrics going on, really cool way. And also the music videos, which were a big thing back then. You have to think music television, MTV back then. And those kind of music videos, doesn't matter if it was death metal or thrash metal or whatever, if you had a cool video and a cool song combined, that was it. That was the excuse to go to your record store and buy it. Remember back then you couldn't just, download shit. You couldn't stream anything. You either had to copy it from a friend, which it was not really illegal. It wasn't legal back then. Still isn't, by the way. Except for home news. There was this kind of a weird thing in Finnish law. But the other thing was you either go to a record store and buy it. Of course, you could listen to it prior to buying, but anyhow. Well, point aside, I got this CD and I started to like it, and I liked what they did with their videos. Like I said, Light Skimmer Revolution had a great selection of songs, but throughout the years, these two albums have kind of had the competition which one was better. And for some reason, which I'm gonna tell you a little bit, The Art of Rebellion became the one Suicidal Tendencies album. Actually, one of the albums I'm ready to give like full 10 out of 10 score. I know it's a big thing to say because I'm really picky with which albums I do that. But this album is so much more than just awesome riffs, which there are plenty, by the way, and also because of Mike Moore's just excellent way of, expressing his, thoughts, attitude and whatnot. And by the way, he must be the one of the most attitude-wise of guy in metal music ever. I mean, he has so much really cool opinions. He's very well-versed, very verbal guy, and knows his stuff true and true. But this album, first it got me because of those great catchy riffs. Great thrash playing, but it was more than that, just thrash. It was kind of a crossover, having this kind of a ballad type of things, slow-paced songs, kind of a building up. And as such, one could even say it's kind of a progressive. I never started to think about that when I was younger, but later on, it became clear to me how multifaceted this album is. It's just like typical thrash album, like boom, Kill 'Em All or early Exodus and whatnot. It's just straight to the point. Fast, aggressive, blah, blah, blah. But also kind of a rinse and repeat kind of stuff. Slayer and otherwise. But Suicidal Tendencies had me there because it was this crossover thing. They had these more aggressive songs, but most of the times not that aggressive. It was kind of like tightrope walking. You had to have these kind of a more easygoing, slow-paced stuff, but also that kind of energy which was like full blowing in your face. But not only because they're really tight playing, when you're just listening to the drums and the guitars here, but it's also like how Mike Moore just leads the way throughout the whole album. How he, does those really soft vocals and then more like kind of this hardcore, punkish vibe when he's just, getting the aggression let out. Not only that, this album also is, I think, one of the albums which have kind of a perfect production. It's really clear, it's very strong and at the same time, and you can just hear all those details. There are lots of cool things and how the album changes throughout its course. It's never like having two similar songs. And that, by the way, is a big, big plus in my books. But the whole icing on the cake kind of thing is that this is actually the album that has one of the best lyrics ever. Now, I don't usually talk about lyrics here because, well, I already made a video about why lyrics don't interest me that much nowadays. There are plenty of reasons, but you can watch that if you're interested in my opinions about lyrics. But this album got me so many ways because I think it's kind of a smarter, it's more personal than so many other albums. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love death metal, but most of the death metal lyrics are just, kind of a fantasy stuff. Murders, serial killers, brutality, torture and whatnot. It might be entertaining, but it's not really deep, it's not philosophical, it's not personal, it's not relatable. Black metal, kind of similar thing, even though different. I mean, most of the black metal stories, be it occult, be it kind of a satanistic, it's just too far-fetched. It's too much fantasy for most of the time. I love it when it's about kind of aggression and darker paths, and when it's kind of a more relatable, the real world as well as personal stuff. And I like some of the metaphors a lot. but most of the black metal lyrics, to be honest, I couldn't give less. But albums such as this, which has really personal, I think it's like looking at through somebody's window at their own lives, and then you start reflecting like, does this apply to me? Then it gets really interesting. This is a whole different topic. I'm getting off road here. I better stop. I'd rather make a different video about it. But these are all the reasons why I like this album so much. You know, the songs which can go really from kind of a simple, groovy, trashy to very ballad-like things. It makes me move. It almost makes me shed tears. Well, that's maybe too far, but anyway. And there are also songs which I got to like later on. For example, in the midway, this is I wasn't meant to feel this / sleep at the wheel. I originally kind of disliked the song. It was one of those songs that I didn't kind of get. It was too weird for me, kind of too not funky like Suicidal Tendencies did some points, which I still am not a big fan of. But it was one of those tracks that kind of didn't feel, and I kind of wanted to remove it. But luckily back then, well, it's not still my habit, but luckily back then when you had these kind of like files, MP3 or whatever, and you could basically just remove the tracks which you don't like one of my friends does. You couldn't do that, so either you went for the skip button and moved on, or then you just listened through it. You kind of swallowed the tough cookie. And thus I started to like it. Once again, later age, when these lyrics started to more appeal to me, and also song-wise I started to like it. Not as much as the better songs, which there are, by the way, plenty. Like the first track, Can't Stop. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's lyrically so touching in a way, and I mean the song-wise, just great. Or the second one, Accept My Sacrifice. But again, there's this kind of a moody song, nobody hears. It's not that cool, but I kind of like it. Also, songs like Gotta Kill Captain Stupid. It's aggressive and it's straight to the point. Even to this day, those lyrics, it's like, get your stupid ass away. You know, kill the stupid in you. I mean, man, it's so great. And also, I'll Hate You Better, which is kind of must be the softest hateful song ever. I mean, all those lyrics are just like, don't, cross my path. Don't screw me or you'll pay for it. But it's made the soft way. If you still watch the great music video, you get the point. It's kind of a soft, it's kind of a happy almost, but when you listen to the lyrics or watch the video, it's different. It's kind of I wouldn't call it irony, even though there are plenty of that, but it's kind of a paradoxal. It's soft and nice at the same time, as well as it's all about, revenge and stuff like that. Really great. Basically, there are no weak tracks. There are no like mediocre tracks. This is one of the albums I can go through and through and through and not get disappointed. I've been listening to it so many times, I probably wouldn't even need to do an extra spin for this video alone. But I wanted to have the fresh feeling, because this used to be on my old MP3 player prior to smartphones at the time, and I would be listening to this many times. And I would just go, feel those lyrics and all that stuff. So, once again, this is one of my all-time favorites, and I know it's not most people following the channel. Bear with me, and I totally urge you, give it a chance. It might just not be your cup of tea, but it's definitely worth listening to. And that being said, I think it's a lot. Anyhow, those who made it this far, thank you for watching, thank you for listening to. Next month, we will have something totally different. So until that, take care, good night, and listen to some good music.